Hello everyone, my name is Kunal and I will be presenting as well as helping all of you in this session to do some hands-on exercises with respect to mastering the multidimensional cube on Fabric Plan. Multidimensional cube is a core, or I would say one of the core features of Fabric Plan. So we look at the topics for the session. We'll speak about cube a bit, then we will actually do some hands-on exercises on these four very crucial yet very popular and important use cases in real world. So we do some expense allocation, then we get into the allocation of chart of accounts. We will do the allocation of targets set by the business leaders or decision makers. And we would then move to the forecast allocation. They sound very simple. However, in real world, it is very complex to handle these use cases because they all involve multiple dimensions which may or may not be related to each other. What is Cube? Cube is a core feature, a native functionality inside Fabric Plan. It is a multidimensional planning engine which is used for planning as well as allocations for related and unrelated dimensions coming from your semantic model. Let's see how traditional platforms face the difficulties while handling multidimensional cubes. Now, modeling complexity is very high in traditional platforms. And when you have unrelated dimensions coming in together, or let's say a different scale of dimension of the same hierarchy coming in for your module, you will be forced to create and use dimensional modifiers. Then it is very difficult to handle unrelated dimensions at the same time because it becomes very high maintenance. And secondly, such kind of models or modules which are made to handle unrelated dimensions, they become your staging modules and they take a lot of processing and storage power of the platform. Secondly, once you have this kind of an architecture in your platform, eventually it will still do unidirectional allocation. So once an allocation happens from point A to point B, it is very difficult to bring it back to point A from point B. And in order to do it, you will end up creating more dimensional modifiers. The complexity keeps increasing, and that's why it's very high in maintenance. On the other hand, what we have in Fabric Plan is a cube which is very good with its front end interface. So you don't need to think about or worry about too much of technical skill set that you need because everything is like click and proceed. Then you have a very intuitive dimensional breakdown. So you definitely do not need modifiers for dimensions which are not related. All you can do is when you have the reference measures, and we will take a look at all these steps as we proceed further in the hands-on exercises. You will look at how breakdowns are created quickly, and then the most important thing about how unrelated dimensions are handled in Fabric Plan is something that we will look at today. And it will be happening without any coding or programming. What I love personally about Cube is it handles allocations bidirectionally. So you make changes in point A, and in point B, you see the changes. Whatever changes you make or reiterate the changes in point B, it will go back to point A. So point A and point B are two different modules we can think of, or two different processes we can think of within the planning ecosystem. Finally, it handles unrelated dimensions without any maintenance, especially because of its capability to handle the partitioning very intelligently. So before you start, ensure that you have access to the PBIX file that you have received. This will give you access to the semantic model. And then once you download this exactly in Power BI desktop, please use the publish option and publish it on a Fabric workspace. Then eventually, while the publish completes, you will have this kind of a message. If this message comes, do not worry, just close this window and you can also close your Power BI desktop file because by that time your semantic model is already a part of one of the workspaces that you selected on Fabric. Now, finally, log into Fabric and ensure that Fabric Plan is enabled by your tenant admin via the admin portal settings because in order to invoke or use this or create this work item and eventually create all the apps of planning that we are going to see in this session, you need to have Fabric Plan enabled. Now let's get going with our first use case. So the first use case that we have is expense allocation. Take a look at the user stories because this is very interesting. As a user, I would want to report monthly actual revenue by region, by country, by city, by channel, by product family, and by product. So there are six dimensions. And I'm not talking about time dimension here because throughout the entire session, you will see that we are taking all the three scales of time, which will remain common throughout all the apps we create, which is by year, by quarter, and by month. Then the next user story for this use case is that I want to report my monthly actual operating expense by region and country, which means there are two apps. The first one with six dimension and a different measure. The second one with two dimensions and a different measure altogether. And the third user story is I want to allocate my actual operating expense to city, channel, product, family, and product. Here we start thinking about how can this be handled, because if you see the last point, which is highlighted in red, it says my actual revenue data has all the six dimensions, but my actual OPEX data has only country dimension. That means I never had OPEX at city level, channel level, or product level, even product family, which is the parent of the product. But here is the final user story where I want to calculate the gross margin by city, channel, product, family, and product. Now, to calculate the gross margin, I need the OPEX to be allocated to the dimensions which was never related to the measure. This is a very classic use case of actual expense allocation, and you can visualize multiple other use cases where actual expense allocation happens to a totally different dimension where the reports were never transacted, or I would say there are no transactions at that context within your data. So now let us quickly hop on to Fabric and take a look at how we can achieve this use case. Let's get ready for hands-on. All right, so assuming that you have access to the Fabric plan work item after enabling it through the tenant settings, and also you have access to the semantic model which has been published on the Fabric workspace, we should get started. So we are on Fabric workspace and let's click on the new item. I'll click on all items and then I will search for plan. So you have this plan preview which has been favorited. And then I'll give a name to this artifact, this work item. So let's call it cube training, and then I'll hit create. For the first time, when you create a new plan work item, it might take 30 seconds to 1 minute because it's trying to warm up the engine and getting started. Now, once you do it, you will have this kind of a screen. The first thing that I want you to do is click on the setup connection, and you may or may not have any DMTS connection. So data management and transformation services is a connection that allows you to communicate and get the data consumed from one lake catalog where your semantic model will also reside. So the first thing that you should be doing is create a Fabric SQL connection. It will try to give a connection name which is already existing. But you go ahead and click on create new connection and then give a name to the connection and hit create. Ensure that the authentication kind is always organizational account. Once that is done, you click on the setup connection again. You will see your connection names here. The last one, hit connect. All right, congratulations, you have successfully completed the first step. Now the next thing is you need the data to come from your semantic model. So you will click on semantic model. Here again, you will have a connection, similar DMTS connection that we built earlier, but that was for Fabric SQL connection. This is for semantic model connection. So we'll click on create connection. Again, since we have an import mode storage semantic model, we don't have to go ahead with some extra steps because we are not using a direct link storage board semantic model. We'll create the new connection, training semantic model. Authentication kind should be account, organizational account. Here you'll be asked to sign in once. Click on sign in, select your credentials. It has authenticated that you are the authorized user of this environment. Hit create. All right, training semantic model has also been created as a connection for this specific step. Now you would also observe that there is an initial that has been added to the connection name. This is a good practice actually, which is earlier there was no such connection extension name provided, but now it is automatically creating the user credential itself, which shows who has created this connection. Now let's click on searching the semantic model. Did you notice that we are directly trying to connect with the One Lake catalog? And this is the semantic model that we should have because we've completed the step of publishing it on the Fabric workspace. And I'll click on add and I'll say connect. All right, so now we have the semantic model in, we can start creating our app. Now we've got three types of sheets or apps: planning, power table, and intelligence. We need to click on planning, give it a name. Let's give it a name of gross margin by product. This is what our use case is all about. The moment you have your planning sheet created, you will have different panes here. So I'm going to talk about each pane. So we've got a bookmark pane, which allows you to create bookmarks, public and private both. Not a part of the use case. We've got comments here. Again, you can write comments directly on the app, which can be visible in this pane. We've got your classic filter, fields, and data pane that you, I believe, are already familiar with since you may have used Power BI at least once. And then you've got the data pane. Now, what's different in the data pane? You've got your semantic model. You've got any sheet that you create. You can see it here. Even the cube that you are going to create will be shown under the sheets section. Then you've got queries. This is more for info bridge, internal bridge transformation, query editor interface of the artifact, which is integrated within the plan artifact. Now, we will talk about the semantic model because we want to create the report quickly. And now we need 6 dimensions that we saw. We've got region. So let's get the region name. We've got country. We've got city. Then we have channel. Then we have product family. And then we have product. So we've got our 6 dimensions here. Now we need a time dimension in the columns. Let's click the date table and get the date hierarchy inside the columns. We don't need the day scaling, so let's remove it. And then we need the measure. So let's get the DAX measures folder name sales and get the revenue actual inside. Now let's take a look at the report. All right, so let's quickly expand the row hierarchies. Let's click on quick format and say native. Let's remove some of the decimals and let's expand the column width. Now the first user story is completed. Let's take a look at the second user story. The second user story says that we want to report the monthly actual OPEX, operating expenditure, that would be by region and by country, right? So let's go ahead and try to create the second app. But before that, let's click the save button. Always ensure that you click the save button whenever you enhance or enrich anything on the canvas. Now let's click the plus icon, click on planning. Let's give it a name as OPEX by country. We should have given the name as revenue by product, but finally we want to get the gross margin calculated by product. That's why we gave this name. Now in OPEX by country, let's get region, let's get country, let's get the date or the time dimension without the day scale, and finally the DAX measure. We'll click on P&L, and within P&L, let's expand the data pane. We have expense, the operating expense actual. Now this is a very descriptive name, so why shouldn't we actually change this to something which is more report or application friendly? So we'll say OPEX actual. Let's slide the fields pane in, and then we'll do a bit of formatting quickly. We'll have this as native, quick format, expand the width, reduce some decimals, and we are good. So let's save this. Now let's take a look at the third user story. Now the third user story is about allocating the actual operating expenditure to city, to channel, to product family, and to product. So let's click on the first app, and let's try to get our measure of operating expenditure in this app and see what it shows. So I'll click on DAX measures, I'll click on P&L, operating expenditure, bring it here. Now there is a very interesting observation. You see that since my operating expense is only reported by country as the lowest level of granularity, I do not have the data by city or by any other unrelated dimensions. So in this case, I will not be able to calculate my gross margin by product. On the other hand, since my revenue already covers region and country, let's see whether we can do the gross margin calculation in the other app. After clicking the save, I'll click here in the other app, and then I'll try to get my revenue actuals here. So let's go to DAX, get the sales folder, and bring the revenue actuals here. It works well because revenue actual is calculated for all the 6 dimensions, so we shouldn't have any problem. But what we can do here is we would like to take the actual OPEX, and then we want to use this OPEX to allocate the operating expenditure at product level for all all the 5 dimensions which are pending. I mean, right from channel to city, or city to channel, channel to product family to product. So all the 4 dimensions which are pending. So what we can do here is we can create a very interesting measure. We'll click on insert column. We'll click on the number input option. We'll click on insert a new series. This empty series creates an empty measure, but we are going to create breakdowns here. And this is the first step of creating a cube measure. So we will say OPEX allocated, and then we are going to click on add breakdown. So here we need to use a reference measure, which is similar to the measure that we have in the previous app, because the previous app has got revenue actual as a measure that is available for all the 6 dimensions. So we do not need operating expense, because the moment operating expense comes inside the cube as a reference measure, you see that actually this measure does not have those 4 dimensions. It only ends at country. But revenue is a measure which touches almost all the dimensions that we are interested in. So we will use revenue actual as our reference measure. And then since this visual only has, or this app only has region name and country name, we can add the missing dimensions in the breakdown. So this is the piece that I was talking about. It's a very intelligent piece, and uh, it will not force the users to create multiple apps only to make dependencies and staging modules. So let's click on the city name, We need to match the dimensions that are there in the previous app. So we need 6 dimensions here. So 2 dimensions are already related and matching. We'll get the unrelated dimensions which are not matching with the previous app. Then we get the channel name. Then we get the product family name. And then we get the product name. That's it. So we've got 6 dimensions with a reference measure that touches all the dimensions, all the 6 dimensions. We'll click create. And then we just hit create here. It says cube measure creation in progress. All right, so cube measure is created successfully. We'll just expand this a bit and we'll click on save. I would like to show you where this measure appears in the data assets. Let's click on the data pane and click on sheets. You see the cube is created and you have this measure, right? So let's see what happens now. Let's go ahead and ensure that we have the column grand total on the left. Now we've got column grand total, which totals all the 3 years, or let's say all the 36 months of actual data we have. And we'll click on save again. This time we would like to just click on the OPEX actual, right click, copy, click on the OPEX allocated total, right click and paste. Now you see that you've got all the leaf level values. They're all equally distributed. So we'll click on the distribution, spread and distribution icon, and then we will say, go ahead with OPEX actual weights. So now our OPEX allocated measure and OPEX actual measure are same. We do not need to see OPEX actual now. We'll just click on show columns and hide this. Now let's slide in the data pane, click on save. We need to have our gross margin calculation by product. So let's first try to calculate the gross margin by country. We click on insert column, click on formula. Let's name it as gross margin actual. In the formula editor, we will just click on revenue actual minus OPEX allocated. This is an object-based formula syntax, so we do not need to create formula cell by cell since it is a multi-dimensional environment. And then we go ahead and click on create. So now you see the gross margin actual is also available. Let's click all the 3 measures and go ahead and give it a prefix of $sign, apply. All right, so we've got gross margin actual by country, but we need it by product. Let's click save here and then go to gross margin by product, the first app. We do not need operating expense actual because it is not making any sense. We'll close this. We'll just remove it from the visual. Slide the fields pane in. And now click on the data pane, expand the sheets, click on cube. You see the ellipsis, click that and say insert as a measure. It'll ask you to save in case if you have not saved any specific change that you made previously. So we'll just click save and continue. Now it is linking the cube measure. And once the match happens, it gives you the measure here. I'll save this, slide this data pane in. Now very carefully observe that OPEX actual, which was used for creating OPEX allocated measure. Again, it is an actual value. Now it shows you all the total level values of OPEX. That is this, and this column. They are all correct. You also have it correct in the region. I'm sorry, OPEX allocated in the region. You also have it correct by country. This is exactly matching, but you see rest of the values that you see in all the unrelated dimensions, they are not matching, right? So what we do, we simply go ahead And okay, let's do one thing. Let's get the grand total on the left. Right. Now we click on the grand total. We'll click on the distribution spread icon and we'll say distribute weights by revenue actual. So did you observe that the weights were applied for all the unrelated dimensions? But for the related dimensions, there was no change, which means it retains the actual values reported by country. And for any other dimension which is not matching, it will use the weights of revenue actual, which is the reference measure. Now you've got the operating expense by product. Just do one thing, go ahead and click on save and create the gross margin calculation or formula measure, which will give you gross margin by product. So let's do it quickly. You know the drill now. Insert column formula. We'll say gross margin actual, formula editor, click actual, and operating expense allocated. So revenue actual minus OPEX allocated. Click on create and you will see the GM actual, the gross margin actual by products. So let's do one thing. Let's go ahead and use the gear icon of the show columns and set this up uh, very nicely on the formatting of the widths. So we'll give 110 and that should be done. We'll just close this. All the three measures, select them, give them a nice prefix of dollar value. So you have got every calculation done for the gross margin at product level. Now this is how you report your operating expense actual and then allocate the actual values by unrelated dimensions using cube. Don't forget to click on save. We have completed the entire use case now. Let's go ahead and take a look at the second business use case. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the first use case, but now the second use case is going to get a little trickier because here we are going to allocate chart of accounts and use those values of chart of accounts to products. Let's see the user stories because this is going to get really trickier. I want to report monthly P&L, which is my GL actual amount by country, report category, report subcategory, and GL accounts. I want to allocate the GL actual from GL accounts to products. See this second user story. This is the complexity I was talking about. You have a totally different hierarchical structure on reporting, financial accounting, and chart of accounts. But product is a different hierarchy, which has product, product family, brand, XYZ. These are separate hierarchies and separate contexts of business. How would you actually use the values of one specific hierarchy and allocate it to using some ratio to the other hierarchy? I want to use the weights of revenue actual by products for allocation. That's the third user story. Of course, if we can achieve the second one, definitely we can do it by using the third one. Now, the highlighted point is very, very important here. The actual revenue data has 6 dimensions, including country and product, which we already know. But the actual GL amount data only has country and GL accounts dimension. So you see, GL accounts dimension is something that is the trickier part here. But you see, there is already a common dimension sitting here, which is country. So there is a hope, and we should be able to do this very easily in the cube of Fabric Plan. Let's hop on to the Fabric Plan app that we are going to create and see how we can complete this use case. All right, so let's build the P&L by country and by GL accounts and take the values of GL accounts to spread and allocate it to the product dimension. Now, if you think about this use case, it is a very complex use case for real world scenarios, and it's technically very difficult to maintain this kind of allocation. But let's see how we do it in a Fabric Plan using Cube. So building a P&L by country will need the right set of hierarchies, which we have in our semantic model. We bring the country name. We straight away go to the GL accounts dimension and get our F1, which is a report category, F2, which is report subcategory, and then comes our
chart of accounts head, and we have our chart of accounts with GL code and name combination. You can rename this in case if you want to. So let me just rename this quickly. Report category, and we have report subcategory. That should be fine. And now we get our time dimension in the column. So we go to the date table, get the date hierarchies in, and remove the day scale. And now we get the appropriate measures in. So first we will bring the GL amount actual, which is sitting in the finance folder in the values fields. Now let's just slide this in for a bit. And we see that there are some blanks because we also have non-P&L chart of accounts here, those belonging to the balance sheet. So let's go to filter pane, and then we have the head, and what we can do is select all and just uncheck assets, equity and liabilities. If we have data pertaining to this, we can continue with our exercise, but this use case is precisely meant for P&L. Let's look at some formatting options. Quickly bring the native source format, decrease the decimals, and why don't we change the total? Instead of all, we write total net income. And let's sort this to descending. Okay, so we had the grand total, the column grand total enabled for left side view. In case if you don't see this, just click here and then choose left for column grand total. That's how you can see the grand total of the column. Now let's save this and just quickly take a look at how the PNL looks like. Right, for every country we have a PNL. So I'll click the burger icon and I'll just collapse all, and we have it by country. We have it based on the heads, the report category, the report subcategory, and also the GL accounts, the chart of accounts. So this looks good for now. Let's see what happens when I get my revenue actual measure here from the sales folder. If I get revenue actual here, revenue is by region, country, city, channel, product family, and product. Revenue does not have report category or anything related to the finance hierarchy, including the GL or the chart of accounts, right? So it becomes very difficult to actually allocate it in a simple allocation, weight-based allocation on the same model, on the same app. And this is where Cube comes into play. So you see that till the country level, the value matches. So for anything which is next to the country hierarchy in our fields pane, so report category all the way down till GL code, you will not see any different value. You will see the same total of the country. So this is the correct behavior. But we would like to take the values of individual chart of accounts and spread it by product. What do we do now is we simply save it at this point in time and create a duplicate of this app. So let's expand the Explorer, click the ellipsis, and just say duplicate. It gives you this message or warning box which says duplicating the sheet will not retain write back destinations, write back settings, info bridge measures, and other stuffs. But we haven't done anything with respect to these functions. So we are good. We'll just click on duplicate. Meanwhile, I'll just slide this in and rename the duplicate app to PNL by product. Save this. Now, after hitting the save, what we should do is we should try to get the unrelated dimension here. So our unrelated dimension, or the dimension where we want to really allocate the GL, the chart of accounts values, is product. So in the product table, we have product name, which we can just place it beneath the chart of accounts, which is GL code. So now if you see, we've got an extension or expand icon here. So if I go to purchase, and if I try to click the gear icon and see all the rows on this page, I'll just scroll this down. So till my purchase, my GL actual amount shows correct. But after that, because this value is not coming from, or this particular measure does not have any connection with the product dimension, it shows a blank. However, my revenue is appropriately breaking it. So the 60 million for US, that it shows in the grand total. So this is the US country data that is appropriately spreading the entire revenue actual by the weights or the actuals of all the products. So we want to take individual GL values and spread it by products. This is the use case. It becomes very difficult because we never had the underlying data intersecting these dimensions and they are not related at all. So what we do now, we'll just save it for now, and we will quickly go back to PNL by country after this save is over. Here, let us now create a measure by inserting a column measure, and we will say use the insert a new empty series option, and we will call this as GL allocated, and then we scroll down to add the breakdown, and here we've got all the dimensions of this specific app which does not include product. So we will straight away go ahead and add the product dimension here. And we do not need a reference measure of GL actual amount because it has zero values shown in front of the product dimension in the other app, or let's say a blank cell in the product dimension. Now we will remove this because the products are going to show up and appear the value for revenue actual. We need to retain the revenue actual because we want to use revenue actual as our reference measure. So this is the link between country and product between these two apps. And this is an important step. Now let's click create and create the measure. It takes a few more seconds to have the cube measure created. And now what we can do is we can just expand the width of this specific measure, the GL allocated, and save this. Now let's do one thing. We'll go to PNL by product, and we will go ahead and click the sheets in the data pane, expand the cube, and then bring this measure as inserted measure. So inserting this measure is very necessary. You might see other cube measures also from the previous session, which I've gone ahead and removed. But this is the measure that you should select, GL allocated, which was just created in this second use case. So focus on this measure. That's it. All right. Now let's slide in the panes and just make sure we have a better visibility. So we'll save this. Now, how do we manage the allocation? So let's look at PNL by country, which is actually the source information or source data for the other sheet, because we are going to take the GL allocated value from this sheet or this app, and we want to have it allocated by product. So let's click the total, the grand total. I'll copy this and I'll paste it here. This is a data input measure. You can also type it manually. But since we have the measure values already available, it's better to use copy and paste options. And now you see that this is broken down equally. So what we can do is first, we will choose the reference measure which was used in the breakdown. So the reference measure used in the breakdown was revenue actual. So we will distribute it by the weights of revenue actual. This is the first step. Now, what it does is it will go to all the mapping or matched dimensions and then spread the values as per the weight. Right now, in this app, we do not have products, but in the cube, in the backend, the engine understands that the revenue actual reference measure has the weights available for products. That is an intelligent piece that's available within Cube inside the backend. So we don't have to worry about how it handles the allocation because it will do it exactly how we want it to do. Now, the second step is we choose the weights of GL amount because that's how we want to see the P&L. Now you see that the value of GL amount actual and the GL allocated value is exactly same at the lowest level of granularity. So focus on purchase. It's 18.115 million. We'll save this. Let's see how that shows up. So I'm clicking the second app. It instantly starts processing in the backend and it will start allocating. Now, in a few seconds, you will see the allocation completed. All right. So we have the allocation done. You have got your GL allocated value matching with your GL amount actual all the way till the chart of accounts. That means I'll just open the fields pane. So you've got country value matching, report category, subcategory head, and the chart of accounts GL code. Everything matches till here. This is the final level as per the first app, right? GL code. The first app had GL code as the final level of row dimensions. Now, after this point, you want 18 million to be spread by, okay, let me just, okay, it's already showing all the rows. So I'll just scroll this down. From this moment onwards, we had blanks, but now this negative 18.115 million of this specific chart of account, which is purchase, has been distributed for all the products we have. So we've got 15 products. Let me just select, we have a 15 product count. We have got the sum of negative 18,115,878. So this is the exact spread that is following the weights of the revenue actual of the products for that specific country. We just did it in less than, let's say, 20 minutes. And this becomes a very complex use case in real world scenarios with traditional or conventional applications. This is one of the most complex use cases that I was reiterating this multiple times, but see how easily we are able to do this using Plan and especially the inbuilt cube engine that we have for multidimensional planning. See you in the next use case. Thank you. I hope you would have discovered how a difficult and complex use case can be handled with Q, especially when it comes to relational or unrelational dimensions. Now, here is a third one, which is a very nice use case for relational dimensions. Now, when I say relational dimensions, you have the base value where the weights are going to be coming from, sharing the same dimensions that you want to use for your target allocation. That means I want to have, or I want to use the revenue actual to create monthly revenue target by region and country. So this is going to be an app where, let's say, the business leaders or decision makers are going to create targets by country, region. Then there'll be another set of team who wants to allocate the revenue target from country to channel and product family. So let's say these are your channel or brand managers. And then finally, you need another app where a different team is going to use the values of the second app and use the revenue target allocated from country to city and product. So let's say this will be kind of an operations team who wants to find out at what is the target at product level. And the good part is all the dimensions are related to actual revenue data, which is going to be our base measure. Now, since it is target, it is going to be looking at a future time period. So we are going to use the forecast measure, which is basically a time extension measure. So that's different. And let's see how we can use this to add breakdowns and to make the most of allocations using multidimensional engine of Cube. Time for practicals. Let's start building the apps. All right, time to build the target allocation model. So this is going to be a very good exercise to understand multidimensional cube within Fabric Plan, where it comes to related dimensions, which are sitting in separate apps and how they are still connected and integrated with each other using cube. So global targets, let's bring the global targets by region, and we need country. So this is a very high level target plan that's going to happen. Then let's get the time dimension with bringing the date hierarchy, excluding the day scale. We are done here. Now for the selection of DAX, we have got time intelligence measures. because target setting or target planning happens by looking at the previous year's actual. So we've got revenue actual already in the sales folder. In the time intelligence folder, we should search for revenue actual previous year, right? This measure. This is basically giving you the value in 2024, telling you that this was the revenue actual previous year. That means in revenue actual, this was the revenue reported for 2023. This one was for 24. This one was for 25. But since we are using time intelligence, it is showing the revenue of prior period by pushing it by 1 year. So this is a good start because I will be interested to create target plans looking at what was my revenue last year when I'm creating a target plan for 2026. So we are good here. I'll just save this slide, my fields pane and data pane in. Let me do a bit of formatting here. I can go with auto, by the way. It gives me a nice intelligent auto scale, but let me go with measure or maybe native source format because I would like to check out how the whole numbers, the entire integers look like. And we can do apple to apple matching also. And now there's one more thing. This is a very lengthy and descriptive measure name. So we will go to the fields pane and just quickly change this to revenue prior year. So we'll say revenue PY. This is a sleek and very short name. Uh, Now let us quickly save this, and we can create the duplicates of this first, and then we will create the multidimensional cube measure. So next is, let's go ahead and duplicate this. So we will just click the Explorer pane and then click the ellipsis and then duplicate this. Of course, we'll click on duplicate because we have not done any write back settings, write back destination selections, or info bridge measures. No subscriptions there, so we are good to go ahead and proceed with duplicate. Now, let's change this. The second app was supposed to be target by channel, and this will be channel and country and product family. So we'll same channel, but there are three dimensions we are going to use. I'll save this, and here instead of region and country, we will remove region and we will add a channel, and let's get product family, right? This looks good. Okay, this looks good now. And let's go ahead and save this. Now, the next or the third app, the final app, which we want to use is, let's duplicate this first and click on duplicate. We will be making an app for country, city, and products. Okay. Meanwhile, let me just rename this. This will be called as target by products. Okay. So here we need to retain country. We don't need a channel. And let's get city. And okay, we should not have product family here because it's on product. So let's directly get the product. And this will be product. So we have different dimensions here. We have city and product combination here. Should be fine. Let's slide this in. And we can just save this. I'd like to actually use the sorting and show it in descending. And in all the apps, we can do it as we proceed further. Let me save this again. Now we'll go to the global target. Let's now think of a story. The business decision makers uh, are deciding the global target for the company, and they want to have this target seamlessly integrate with all other apps that we have. So a brand manager or a channel manager should have the same value of targets coming in the app. We should see the target by product, which is meant for operations team, someone who wants to look at supply chain or planning the products. So everyone wants to see the same single source of truth, what is decided by the management. Now let's start the target plan. So model tab. This is a very interesting feature because forecast allows you to create measures with time extension. Now, we assume that we are starting, with target planning on the first day of Jan 2026. That's why our forecast period will be Jan 2026, assuming that today is that day. And then we have a close period measure. So close period forecast, no one changes close period targets, close period forecast. It's just for reference purpose because we need to have the same measure appearing in the close period also. Then we go ahead and choose the open period as data input and we add the breakdown here. But before that, let's name this as target and then we add the breakdown. And in the breakdown, we have our reference measure. That's fine. These are the only two dimensions we have in the breakdown, but you know the drill. We can add more related dimensions here. So we start with city. We do have this in the third app. We need the product family. We need the product also. And we need the channel. So we've got all the 6 dimensions in. Let's click create and let's click create for the forecast measure also. It will definitely ask you to start with some reference or some kind of a measure, some kind of a value. So if you want to start with zero based, you just keep it blank. Or if you want to start with last year's value, you can choose that period as we move to the next screen. So this is where you can start give a copy source. So I want to start with revenue prior year, or I want to start with zero base. That means blank values in the target period for this time period. So let me keep it none for now, and I'll save this. So my target measure is created for 2026. What we can do is we can have our grand totals on the left and our subtotals, column subtotals also on the left, and slightly increase the width and save this. Okay, so I would like to start with this, copy and paste it here. This is equally distributed. Let us use the trend of 2026 prior year, which is actually the revenue for 2025. So let's click that. This followed the same weights. Now, what we can do is we can just simply, after the render is over, we simply say plus 10%. This looks good. We are at 81 million, and let's hit on save. Right, we go to target by channel. Here, let's get our cube measure inserted. That's cool. You see this value. It is actually showing uh, in the equal distribution, but you see by country, the values are exactly matching with the global target. So what we are going to do is we'll save this first, and then we want to use the weights of the next set of dimensions, which is by channel and by product families. So till the country level, the weights are perfectly respected coming from the global targets. Now let's go ahead and say distribute by revenue of prior period, and that will be for 2026. We are done here. Now what we can do is we can go to target by product, and we'll definitely match some of the values to see how accurately this handles the allocation. So here again, let's get the cube measure inserted. All the activities that you see here with respect to creation of cube and inserting it, these are only one-time activities for a specific measure. All right, expand this. And it definitely looks at some weights already. And this weights is coming from cities all the way to products. So country is sending the weights to cities and cities are spreading the weights, or product families are spreading the weights by products. This is already interesting. Let's save this. And now, even if we try to do some distribution, spreading it it is going to follow a specific, uh, a specific weight that we selected from the measure revenue prior period. Now let us make some changes with New York and see what happens to United States. Okay, so let's make some changes with New York when it comes to New York City. Let's say make it 14 million. Okay, so once the change has been made, you can see that the values have been propagated all the way down. So let's see what happens to United States now. It's 28,906,983. Let's look at United States and search for United States. We can simply go ahead and say sort this descending. You'll see US, the value is absolutely matching. And let's go ahead and see what happens to the global target there. Oh, let's save and proceed. Since we sorted this, it is asking us to save because it detects there is some kind of a change on the visual with respect to the change in the data enrichment or change in the formatting. Now you will see that United States shows this value. Okay, so we will make some changes here in North America, and we will say plus 2 million. Okay, let's see what happens with United States now. It's 36,16,463. Cool. We will simply go ahead and check this by target by channel where we do have country dimension. Absolutely brilliant. And now let's do some changes with with electronics and this. Okay, so we do have the equal distribution when it comes to spreading it again. So what we can do is we can simply go ahead and run the distribution. Now the value for United States will change. Let's go ahead and check this. Has again come to 26 million. All right, with this, let's conclude this session and move on to the final one. All right, the final part of this session is a different use case altogether where we are going to create a forecast and allocate it. Now, we are not just going to create a forecast measure with data inputs, we are going to use the predict function to let the system tell us what should be our forecast number and then take this and allocate it by different dimensions which are related or unrelated. And we are going to do it for two different hierarchical sets. So we've got our revenue actual using it to predict the revenue forecast by region country. Then we allocate the revenue forecast from country to channel to product family. Then let's allocate the revenue forecast from product family to product. Wow, this is getting interesting. And then let's use OPEX actual to predict monthly operating expense forecast by country. And then finally, I want to calculate the GM, the gross margin forecast by country using the revenue forecast and OPEX forecast. And now we have the same or almost similar set of highlighted point, which is the actual revenue data has all the 6 dimensions, but the actual OPEX data only has country dimension. So let's see how this interesting and final use case of the day will be handled. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the same model. We have global target, we have target by channel, country, channel, and product family comes here, and then we have got target by country, city, and product. I believe that's what we have here. Yes, country, city, and product. Now let's go to global targets. So the first step that we want to do is we would like to create a forecast measure again. We've got model tab, forecast measure, and then let's go ahead and just keep this name as forecast. Uh, Everything looks okay. Add a breakdown here. We need to have those breakdowns which we wanted to use or we had used in the previous use case, the city, the product family name, product name, and let's scroll down and get the channel. Okay, so we are good here. Let's create and simply go ahead and create this. Again, we are not going to refer any existing measure to start with. We'll keep it as blank measure for now. Well, let's click on save and a forecast cube measure is created. We'll save this, slide these in. And let's see what happens with the predict function and how to achieve that. So we are going to click here on the total, and then in the model tab, we've got predict function. So we are saying at grand total level, let's evaluate every row and find the trend, which could be multi-seasonal, and this will be the forecast date range. So we want the data to be predicted from this historical time, and we want to use the values, predicted values for this period, which is our forecast period. And then there are some confidence level matrix that you can manage between 90 to 100% or up to 90%. We are okay with the default settings. I don't want to put any growth factor in case if you're expecting any growth on top of what the history or historical trend says, you can add the growth percentage here. We are good. We just run the forecast and the forecast is looking okay. What I'll do is I'll save this and I'll put it in forecast measure. Understand that we'll have target as well, but we do not want to bring in target value. We do not want to choose target because this is already a separate measure that we had created in the previous use case. So let's click on forecast and say save. All right, so it shows that looking at the trend, we are possibly going to make 64 millions. We can save this. And now we can further make some slight changes here. So we'll say, let's get, let's say 25% up. And we should be okay now. Let's move ahead and see the results in the next tab, which is target by channel and target by product also. So let's come here. You'd like to have this measure inserted. So we'll go to Sheets, Cube. We have the forecast here. Let's go ahead and insert this measure. Voila. Let's go ahead and use the weights of the prior period revenue, which is 2026 prior period is actually 2025 actual revenue. Let's save this. Go ahead with adding the cube measure in the final app, right? Let's insert the forecast measure. Fine, so we can just go ahead and revenue PY target of 2026, which is actually the revenue 2025. Once the changes are rendered, let's click on save and go back to the global targets. I'd like to have the operating expense by country predicted now, and we would also like to use the forecast as well as the OPEX forecast to calculate the gross margin forecast. So let's do that. I'd like to now have my target measure hidden, and let me bring in the operating expense last year, or let's say the time intelligent measure. Search for operating expense. We just need rename this to OPEX PY. Save this. Just resize this and save this. Quickly go to model tab, forecast measure. This time we'll say OPEX forecast. Choose OPEX PY as a close period measure. We do not want to use breakdown here. It is just meant for this app. In case if you want to use breakdowns, we can use it, but we are just creating the gross margin forecast for global targets app. We'll go ahead and say create. We don't want to start with any values. Let's save it. And let's go ahead and see how the 2026 forecast looks like. So just go ahead and run the predict function again. And we look good here. Maybe we can do the top down evaluation this time. Run a forecast. Okay, let's take a look at it from the table view. This looks fine. Save it and save it to OPEX forecast. Okay, so OPEX forecast is giving me some values. So let me just increase the width of this. And what we can do is we can now make further changes. So let's go ahead and distribute this by the OPEX of 2025 actual OPEX, which is OPEX PY of 2026. Looks okay. Now finally we need a gross margin forecast. So let's go to planning tab and just only show a forecast and OPEX forecast. So we'll uh, hide the revenue prior period, the OPEX prior period also, and go ahead with the planning tab, insert the calculation here, the formula. But because this is a forecast measure, I would encourage you to use the forecast time extension measure again and say gross margin forecast. But instead of having measure reference as a close period value, you can use formula, and you can simply say forecast minus OPEX forecast. So forecast actually is the revenue forecast that we created. That's it. Just select this all and copy, and then come back to open period. Even in open period, we do not need the data input provision for the users. It has to be a formula. And let's go ahead and paste the formula here and say okay. Let's create this and save it. So that's your GM forecast. Select all three, go to planning tab, give a nice dollar prefix. Okay, looks good. So we'll save this. Now, if we make any changes with these values, so let me go to the aggregation and turn off the column grand total as well as column subtotal. So now if I want to make any changes with forecast by period, I can do it. And because this is a cube measure and it is connected with other dimensions using breakdowns, it will flow through all the connected apps. Let's save this, and that brings us to the end of the entire training on multidimensional cube. You have access to this session's recording. You also have access to the semantic model. Do take a look at the recording in case if you have any doubts, revisit those points and try to practice as much as possible. And let's see you in the next session with a different topic altogether. Happy planning.